Good Tuesday evening, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here at Live Weather Impact here on a February 3rd, 2026. The good news today, we melted a lot. The thaw is on. We are melting a ton of snow today. Even with the cloud cover, temperatures soared into the mid-40s, upper 40s to near 50 in a few spots. This is by far the warmest day we've seen in the Charlotte area since last Wednesday. So this was pretty substantial. I was out and about today noticing the snow is super wet. It's melting everywhere. Sun wouldn't have been great, but you don't need sun all the time. Cloud cover and warm temperatures can melt actually more snow than sun. The one thing about sunshine, unless you got bare ground to warm up, it's reflecting off the white snow. In this case, the cloud cover actually supplies some warmth, long wave radiation. So you're bouncing heat back and forth. It's like a blanket, right? It actually helps keep the warmth up a little bit more substantial and spread out. But we melted a lot today, and that's going to continue tonight. And that's kind of your impacts tonight. No refreeze to worry about. It's not exactly going to be warm, but we're only going to fall into the upper 30s, so it stays above freezing. The rate of melting will slow down, but it'll still be melting tonight. So no black ice issues. If there's snow on the ground in your neighborhood, it's going to be slushy. It's going to be wet. It's going to be melting. It's not going to be a sheet of ice like it was this morning in a lot of locations, including our parking lot here at WCNC. Tomorrow, a cold rain develops, and yes, I don't normally get excited for cold rain. It's probably one of the worst things you can have, but in this case, it's a good thing. It melts the snow, washes some of the salt away. But we are keeping an eye on Friday morning, not Thursday morning, Friday morning for a refreeze. I'll talk about Thursday morning here in a minute. And when Alex joins us from up in Greensboro, he'll have more to probably say about this than us because they have a little bit better chance of seeing some wet snow early Thursday morning. Right now, temperatures, again, not warm, but above freezing. We've got 30s and 40s out there. And notice the winds right out of the south. That's the key part. That's going to keep temperatures up. It was 21 this morning. That was a warm spot. Again, Charlotte, kind of one of the oddities. We were 19 at my house. A lot of other places were 15 to 18 in those cold, snow-packed areas up in Cabarrus County, Rowan County. So it was cold this morning. A lot of black ice. But here's what's heading our way. This rain actually will be here later tonight. Now, don't be surprised if there's a few sleet pellets in there because the air is cold enough that a few sleet pellets could freeze above our heads. But remember, the temperature at the ground is going to be above freezing. So sleet pellets in and of themselves aren't a big deal. Tomorrow, though, look at this. 40s and rain. I know it sounds great, but for our snowpack, this will actually help remove a lot of the snow and ice. Just maybe have a shovel out there to clear out the downspouts. Make sure your storm drains are clear of piles of snow. You don't want this water to back up and sit in big puddles that then could refreeze down the road. You want this to drain off. So during the day tomorrow, I have most highs well above the freezing mark with rain, but it's tomorrow night that things could get a little more interesting for areas north of Interstate 40. There's the rain tonight, but the low pressure forms on the front. Cold air is going to try to move in behind the front. It's a race between the cold air and the moisture. So this is always kind of a catch-22. Yeah, if the cold air gets in here, it could change it to snow briefly, but the cold air is also dry air. And it kind of, so we call it cold air chasing moisture. It's not an ideal setup to get snow. In fact, you usually rarely see any at all out of it, and if you do, it has no impact at all. And I think that's the key part. Just because it snows doesn't mean it has an impact, because if it's falling on wet ground that's above freezing or the temperature's above freezing, it has the same impact as rain. We call it white rain when it does this. It's not really a big impact. So mostly cloudy, showers tomorrow, rain tomorrow night. Thursday, early morning, small chance of a little bit of snow, mainly north, and I'll show you where in a minute. And then Friday morning, this is a 24-hour later kind of setup. If things don't dry out, we will still have big piles of snow around. That's all not going to melt. If you've been to any parking lot in a big shopping center, there are giant piles of snow. Those are not going to melt in the next 24 hours. Those will continue to supply water that could refreeze. So tonight you'll see that band of rain. You see a few areas of pink. That's sleet. That's going to be mixing in briefly. As we go into tomorrow, again, not a warm day. Temperatures in the 40s, but here comes the rain from the south. 41 in rain is not great, but it's melting snow. Here comes the cold air. The mountains will definitely see a little bit of snow, but north of Interstate 40, there's a brief chance early Thursday. We're talking 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning where we see a brief shot of snow and then kind of fizzles apart. And then temperatures jump up into the 40s. So that's why I'm not really concerned about, even if snow falls, it's not going to amount to a whole bunch. Temperatures stay just above the freezing mark, but we will be back below freezing early Friday. So right now I'm thinking mostly rain, a cold rain with a few flakes mixed in. You see the area in white, rain there mostly, but some flurries mixed in early on Thursday. And right now our winter weather impacts show none across the majority of our viewing area outside of the mountains, except for Anson, Stanley, Richmond County, which I wouldn't even think there's going to be much there. But if you look to the east over towards Raleigh, there's some yellow. That's probably the part of the state. If there's going to be some wintry weather in the form of some light snow, there could be a low impact there with dusting on the grassy surfaces. Certainly a possibility. But you see Thursday morning, 31 is technically below freezing, but it's going to be for like an hour. It's not going to be enough to cause major issues. Now, Friday morning, if there's still wet areas around, that is going to be more of a problem, 24. And then again, Sunday morning, because I still think we'll have melting going on this weekend. The big piles of snow and ice are going to take through the weekend. I said this past weekend, I think some of this snow would be on the ground for a week. I believe that because of the piles that's so deep in some spots. So certainly looks like a good possibility. So your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast shows that rain tomorrow, not a great day on Thursday, only 40, partly cloudy. Could see a few sprinkles on Friday even behind a Alberta Clipper type system. And then we're near 50 for Saturday and Sunday. But by Monday, we're pushing 60 degrees. And by Tuesday, we're looking at temperatures likely in the low 50s, but let's go 10 days into the future and we can see we're going to melt all of this snow and ice. It's just going to take a while. By next week, we will melt all of it because not only will the daytime highs be in the 50s and 60s, the overnight lows are going to stay way above freezing. So I would expect that we're going to see temperatures probably stay above freezing for 4 or 5 days in a row, which would be significant, and anything left over out there completely melts. So again, we're not overly concerned about tomorrow night. It's not an impactful event. We like to focus on impacts here. Just because there's snow falling doesn't mean it always has an impact. I would treat this all as a cold rain. In fact, I think most roads will actually improve dramatically here in the next 24 to 48 hours. And maybe the morning we have to watch is Friday morning for black ice. Anything wet, refreezing. And even that, to me, looks very patchy. So we'll talk about that with Alex. We'll talk about Artemis, which we got to talk about that. Artemis II has another pushback to another launch window. We'll break that down and talk about this chance for wintry weather coming up in 2 minutes. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Alex Williams joins us from WFMY. And Alex, kind of an interesting thing we got to talk about here, because I'm glad you're with us, because I think this event, which is kind of a minor event, I think even by all standards, especially compared to last weekend, probably has more of an impact for you guys than for us. I'm thinking this is just going to be a cold rain, no big issues for us. But we've got this brief wintry mix, maybe some snow, rain. Let's get your thoughts on what you guys could expect up in the Triad area, because I do think you guys have a little bit longer chance of seeing some snow than we do down here. What are your thoughts on this? And I think primarily from an impact standpoint, what are you telling your viewers up that way?
Yeah, what we're telling them, you might see some impacts late tomorrow night into early Thursday. We have those weather impact alert days now for tomorrow night into early Thursday. Could be some slick spots, because this snow, at least the ratios that I was looking at, a little higher. And so it's going to be more of a wet snow. So less snow expected. So I think accumulation will generally be less than about an inch. You can see there, latest bottle run of the graph. It's interesting, Brad, because it's kind of pushed the colder air coming in later, which is good for the Clash, because we've got the Clash at Winston-Salem going on tomorrow night, and everybody's fingers, toes crossed, and everything, so they can get that event in.
Yeah. There was a pretty big shift in the last two runs. We were pretty socked in with all-day rain, and now it's kind of like there's a pretty big gap between the moisture and the cold air, which is, in the Carolinas, when we normally are wanting snow, we finally got the big one this past weekend. This seems like a common problem, Alex, where we have the cold air chasing the moisture. It's really difficult to get this to sync up. And so that's always kind of a fool's errand to say, hey, we're going to get a big event out of that. But when you get low pressure like this with a stalled front, it's close enough that you could get a brief burst of snow. And I think that makes sense. But I think overall, like you mentioned, it's probably, just a minor impact for us. I've been kind of telling everybody, I think maybe a few flakes mix in before you get up on Thursday. But because our temperatures are a little warmer down here, maybe 32, 33, which is technically close to freezing. But in that case, a wet snow is like cold rain. It pretty much melts on the way down and doesn't really accumulate much. And compared to what we just saw, it's really not going to be that big of a deal. And then, we warm up pretty quickly tomorrow. I know you guys are excited for the Clash, and things dry out pretty quickly. You could be in the 30s to near 40. So whatever happens, it's going to be brief, and it's probably for those people that are up super early on Thursday morning that got to worry about it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking it coming down less than an inch of accumulation. I can show that snowfall map on here. And so just generally less than about an inch. A trace to an inch, I think probably maybe a little over half an inch for some. It just depends. There was some model showing banding there of that when that initial transition happens. So I think that's something you could get on the high side of that, but don't expect a massive snowstorm with this. Again, the same thing, actually, the same rule applied over on the other side of the mountains in Northeast Tennessee. If you had cold air chasing moisture, it just never caught up in time. You don't get big snows that way.
Yeah, basically, there's more things that could go wrong with this than go right for snow. That's kind of the way it always ends up. But it's close enough. We want people to know. And I know you showed this as well, the winter weather impacts from the WPC. Kind of has minor impacts. It is interesting how, as you go to the coast, though, those impacts go to the low range, which is still pretty minor. But I think that makes a little more sense, because the low might be able to wind up a little bit more closer to the coast, and that's usually an area where if there's going to be a burst of snow, that could happen. I'm curious, though, how much melting did you guys have today? We were the warmest we've been since last Wednesday, and even with the cloud cover, there was substantial melting going on today. How's the melt going on in the Triad right now?
I wouldn't say it is well underway. A lot of those, I think Greensboro said 68% of the secondary roads are now cleared. And so that's probably helping out the crews, despite the cloud cover that we had. The temperatures were warm. And as Tim has taught me, he said, watch the dew point. If it's above freezing, then that's going to really encourage melting and melt the snow pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it really was. It was getting the mid-upper 40s down this way. It was wet snow, and I could just tell. It's always, you can tell the melting's going on when I go outside. I can hear the downspout, the dripping of water coming off the roofs. It's a telltale sign that, you're melting it off the roofs. You're doing a pretty good job. talk a little bit about the refreeze, because I mentioned this too. I mean, even if we have rain, we're expecting some pretty good rain down here tomorrow. We're going to melt a lot of snow, but we have these giant piles of snow in parking lots everywhere on the side of the road. There's still going to be piles of snow around this weekend, and we are going to get back below freezing by several degrees, I think, Friday and Sunday morning. So what are you thinking about as far as refreeze and black ice going into the weekend for anything that's left over?
I would say anything that's wet as we start to drop those temperatures drastically, especially maybe with that second punch of colder air coming in as we go towards the weekend. You're going to have to watch for refreezing there. So we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, until all of that snow disappears and until all of the wet roads disappear, you're going to have that chance for black ice. And if we get significant melting where it's just like rapidly melting, massive puddles, almost small lakes and parking lots, things like that, then that's really going to be an issue as we start to refreeze towards the weekend.
Yeah, and I'm really worried too, because we did this in our neighborhood. A lot of people are piling up snow on the curb and near the storm drains. You probably want to clear that out a little bit so the water can get into those areas, because those piles could block the runoff and actually, like you said, create these little lakes and puddles that then become big sheets of ice. So yeah, these piles are popping up everywhere. I'm kind of curious to see how long we're going to go with these piles. There's always a couple places up north where they remove the snow and dump it somewhere, and they keep track of how late into the spring the pile lasts. There's going to be some pile somewhere. It's going to be the nastiest, dirtiest looking snow, and it's going to be sitting there for like 2 weeks. I actually had to look up the longest stretch of measurable snow on the ground at the airport, and it's like 16 days here in Charlotte, which is wild to think. But if we get to 10, I think that puts us in the top 10 for number of days with something on the ground. So that'll be a fascinating stat to follow. That's Kannapolis on our camera right now. It's so true, because that's right on the Cabarrus Rowan County line. Those piles are huge, and you can tell they cleared the streets great, but those are giant piles. And
they're taller than trucks.
Yeah, I mean, up north they would come in and truck this out and remove it, but here it's just going to sit there and it's going to have to melt. So that's what I'm talking about. That pile there will not melt for another probably week or so. We'll see that next week at this time.
Should we start a clock?
Yeah, we should be out. We could have a countdown clock on the pile melt. But Alex, talk a little bit about the Clash. I know they got postponed once because of weather. A lot of NASCAR fans down in our area as well. What are your thoughts about that? Have you heard anything? Like, what is the kind of make or break for them to be able to get this going tomorrow night? Or I mean, not tomorrow night, but Thursday.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. Yeah, and you were actually right. It is tomorrow night. So tomorrow night's when they rescheduled the Clash. And so what we're hearing is it's gonna happen. Rain. They said they have wet tires that they're able to use and race in for these types of conditions. And even with the snow, I mean, with it trending later, that's even better. Yeah. But they're all gung ho. They're excited for fans to come. They've cleared the parking lots. The track is looking great, and they even cleared the grandstands, so it should be a great time of racing here in the Triad.
Yeah, I saw they even had drivers helping to clear out some of the stands. I thought that was great. That's great. So the fans aren't going to be sitting in snow. They're actually going to be able to enjoy it on some night. So that's tomorrow. I mean, we got to get this going because Daytona's not too far away. I mean, people want to get this racing so we can get NASCAR going again. We also had other big news. The weather was a big story, obviously, today. It will be tomorrow, the next couple of days. But we got to talk about Artemis II. We have some news that we got to break to you. So, James, roll the open. All right, so stop me if you heard this before. Artemis 1 had leak issues. Artemis 2, guess what? We have leak issues. But this is not, I would say it's not the end of the world, because this is the reason they do the wet dress rehearsal, to see if there's issues. They did have leaks, and they also had other issues which came out in a press conference today. The leaks were one thing, but there were some communication issues, other things. So basically what it boils down to is they're going to punt this to the second launch window, which honestly I kind of suspected would be the case, but we got confirmation today, and let's hear from NASA about what the plan is going forward.
We try to test like we fly, but this
this interface is a very complex interface, and when you're dealing with hydrogen, it's a small molecule, it's highly energetic, and we like it for that reason, and we do the best we can. And actually this one caught us off guard, and the initial things that we were seeing, and the technical team felt like we either had some sort of misalignment or some sort of deformation or debris on the seal.
So I thought that was fascinating. They had this issue with Artemis I, which was unmanned. Artemis II is manned. There's going to be a crew on board, so there's going to be a much higher safety protocol. But I thought this was interesting because, they had this issue with the first one. They're having it again. But I thought they made a good point. This is a giant bomb that they're basically filling full of hydrogen, and you're putting humans on board. So you don't want to take any chances, Alex. And in space flight, I think sometimes from the outside looking in, people go, what's the deal? What's going on? This is kind of the process, right? You test the thing. If it doesn't work, we're going to make sure everything's right, and we'll just wait until we have everything perfect. So I thought that was interesting, but not totally unexpected in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think you were supposed to go down there. So you're still slated. Are you going to go back down? Are you going down there in March?
Well, now my opportunity to go is increasing because we had the Super Bowl and the Winter Olympics this weekend, so it was going to be like probably not, but maybe. I was like, but now I think the opportunity to go down could increase. But this is the problem with trying to plan a trip to go cover this, Alex. You don't know. There's a window. There's no guarantee it goes off. And so now we're in that second launch window. And if you guys remember the first time with Artemis I, when they had this delay, they had to roll the whole rocket back to the launch assembly and recharge the batteries and check things. Well, the good thing this go around, they learned and they built this, I don't know if they built it, but they upgraded it. I don't know how I would frame that, James. So whatever they did, they basically can leave it out there for 2 launch windows now without having to roll it back. But they did say, if this doesn't happen in the March one, they will have to roll it back and then recharge the batteries basically in the system. Is that correct, James? You listened to the whole press conference today.
I did listen to the whole news conference. That is correct. They've done something to the batteries. There are batteries for science experiments on board.
Yeah.
There are batteries for the safety systems on board. They did some sort of change so that they don't have to take it in and out every month because it's a very slow trip back to the vehicle assembly building, back to the pad. So we get about 2 months out of every recharge.
Yeah.
Unless there's a problem. So they're hoping to fix this hydrogen leak on the pad, but they could roll back if it's more complicated of a repair than they initially thought.
Yeah, and I thought from that soundbite we had, he said something about a seal. When you have a leak, you're usually a seal. And I'm just theorizing, but I'm curious if the cold weather had to play with this because those are rubber seals, and this is what happened with the Challenger, right? Those things got brittle, and it caused a leak to form there. And so you wonder if there's something with the cold weather there. So they're going to retest that and figure it out. And if it is a seal that's has to be replaced, then I would assume they're going to have to roll it back. But the good news is they have time to do that. They can do some work on the launch pad before they do that. But so everybody out here was getting excited for this weekend. You can wait. It's going to be March now. The third launch window is in April, right, James?
Yes, and actually this was a question today.
Yeah.
Was NASA has announced launch opportunities, which were the beginning of February, the beginning of March, the beginning of April, and they were asked today, do you have launch opportunities after that? And essentially it's 5 or 6 days every month, and they've given us the dates through April.
Yeah, so it'll all be based on the lunar cycle, so it's why it's every 30 days. You basically have a launch window. But then you start getting into more weather issues the later we get out of winter weather, and we start worrying about lightning and thunderstorms, which down there, as you know, Alex, that seems to always delay even SpaceX launches down there.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, like you said, Brad, it's a bomb. So you have astronauts sitting on top of a bomb. You can't cut the fuse once you start to light it. So you've got to make sure all of those issues are fixed because there's people's lives at risk. There's millions, if not billions of dollars of technology on board that could get destroyed. And so, you just have to take it slow when it comes to this. It's exciting. I looked into the mission. So they're supposed to photograph the dark side of the moon and some
isn't
of
that
the
exciting?
geology and
that is so cool.
Space weather. That's
Yep.
so they're going to have like space weather. The Space Weather Prediction Center is going to be like 24/7 with them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really cool stuff that'll come out of this.
Yeah, the dark side of the moon stuff is pretty cool because we've never really kind of explored that part. And because they're making this giant orbit on the dark side, this will technically be the farthest that man has ever traveled from Earth in a spacecraft. So even during the Apollo missions, they never went this far out because they stayed roughly closer to the or to the moon, and they stayed on the sunny side. They didn't go on the dark side. So, yeah, this is there's a lot of cool things in experiments. You made a good point about space weather. You know, we've had a very active solar cycle, and James and I actually talked a lot about this. Like, you know, space weather really impacts astronauts a lot. They would have to take precautions on the launch, and from radiation, they would have to like protect themselves if there's a giant solar flare when this mission is going on.
Yeah, and I mean, so those are things you just don't think about. And the sun actively has a major role, especially active sun cycle. That has a major impact on Earth's weather. You don't think about it, but I mean, it does. It's our number one source of heating, and that causes our, heating differences on the Earth, which causes pressure differences, winds, all of that. So weather's driven by our sun, and when the sun's in an active solar cycle, we need to be able to study that. So it'll be interesting to see what data they collect with, being on that side of the moon.
And during that last solar storm, Brad, do you remember the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in their video update was saying, we're talking to NASA, we're talking to the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, and we're even monitoring Artemis, which is out on the pad. If they had been up in space, that would have been a whole nother moving target for them to have to track.
Yeah, well, people don't realize when there's one of those giant solar flares, there's actually a shielded room or compartment, I would call it, in the space station where astronauts will actually go seek shelter until that flare passes the space station, because there's that much radiation that passes them. So this is a huge deal. We haven't really had an active solar cycle like this when we've had manned space flight going on, because remember that's 11-year cycle for the sun. The last one was the active cycle really wasn't very active. It felt like a minimum. So if you think about it, it's really been like 24 years since we've had a really active solar cycle. That's why we've seen so many aurora borealis sightings here in the south, which is the other reason I think people are like, does this happen all the time? It kind of did, but it happened a long time ago. We didn't have smartphones and social media that we could all kind of enjoy it. So it is going to be interesting. I'm really excited for this now. I'm actually somewhat glad it got moved to the second launch window. I know James is too, because it gives us more time to cover it and talk about it. We've just been slammed with winter weather, so now we can kind of enjoy the space stuff. James, anything else that's stuck with you today from the press conference?
I wish I had a picture of it, but launch director Charlie Blackwell Thompson, Googled it. She had earrings that were spectacular. They were the SLS rocket. I don't know where she got them. Maybe they're one of a kind.
That's a true space geek when you know that. I mean, that's what I love about those guys and those gals. They are great because they are all into it. So we'll obviously be talking more about this. We'll talk more about our cold rain and brief snow chance again tomorrow, but stick around. We got more news coming up.